Hey, Geekscape, it's Jonathan London, your host. Maybe you know me from, hosting this podcast, Geekscape. I've been doing it since 2006. Maybe you know me as a filmmaker, or maybe so as a writer, maybe some comic books or video games or different things I've written or directed over the years is how you came to Geekscape. Maybe Geekscape, how you came to those things. But we're here now. So strap yourselves in for some pop culture talk. That's what we've been doing so well on the show. And if you're listening to the audio feed, you've been getting a lot of it. You basically came with us to Comic-Con. We did 4 straight episodes straight from the booth with various guests. They're stitched together like you were there. If you're watching this live, maybe on Facebook or YouTube, or you're dropping some resumes on LinkedIn, wherever you're watching this, maybe it's Twitch, please go and subscribe to the audio feed because that's really good content. And Matt Kelly and I busted our rumps with our guests to record in the booth people like Ian Kerner, who you're going to hear from a little later today in this very special. And I think the content's really good. We had some amazing people drop by the booth. We had amazing people signing in the booth. And with everybody, we just took a few minutes. We recorded some quick interview moments, talked about the con, talked about what they were experiencing in the con. We had some Geekscapes like Katie and Marie and Shane and Derek, Josh Jackson. They went and experienced the con. They brought that back to the booth. They told me what they were doing out in San Diego. So if you missed San Diego Comic-Con, if you were not there, you got to check out the audio feed for the Geekscape podcast and go and subscribe to it because there's tons of content on there. One last piece that I'm going to put up there next week. It's the panel that I hosted about adapting material from comic books to TV and film. I had an amazing panel. It was so much fun. And again, like you're gonna hear this and you're gonna be like, wow, Jonathan's bringing us to San Diego Comic-Con. I just saved $500 or whatever the tickets are. I just saved a hotel room. I just saved a week. I didn't have to like sweat my way through the gas lamp and fight my way through the floor. And I didn't get any exclusives, but at least I went to Comic-Con with Geekscape. I think some of the episodes are hilarious. That's which is the one where we got in a fight with Yu-Gi-Oh. It's all in there, folks. So all the Geekscape drama right there on the Comic-Con floor, and we brought it to you. So subscribe. It's also the only way you're going to get that panel episode next week. So I will no longer implore you to subscribe to the podcast. You should have been doing it years ago, dog. All right. Now I'm calling you dogs. I'm definitely still recovering from San Diego. All right. This episode is not a normal Geekscape episode either. Although I like that I'm broadcasting live with you folks and streaming to all the different outlets. This is the Secret Invasion special. And we're talking about the Disney Plus MCU, Sam Jackson fronted Secret Invasion, loose adaptation of what was going on in the Marvel comics about 10 years ago. And there's a more recent miniseries that just came out that tried to make things a little bit more spycraft in line with what we got for a series here on Disney Plus. It's been talked about a lot. Maybe not in the most positive light, but Ian Kerner and I have a take on it. Christian Blatt already has a take on it in the comments. So if you're watching this live on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch, jump in the comments. Christian Blatt says, in many ways, I wish that I was right. I was here right now, but at the same time, I'm so relieved to not have to talk about the show again after spending more than 6 hours over on Marvel Movie Talk. He acts like that wasn't voluntary. I love that Christian Blatt is like, man, I'd love to have joined you and Ian and I to talk about Secret Invasion, and he was invited. He just couldn't make the schedule work, and it's all good. Family comes first. His son has lessons and things. He's being a dad. Christian's doing what he should be doing, but in no way are you a victim for having already spoken about this series for 6 hours, Christian, on Marvel Movie Talk, soon to join the Geekscape network. That's masochistic, pal. So don't bemoan your fate here, pal. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to close the door on that one. Sean Fernando says they did Robin Sparkles dirty. All right, listen, we're talking Secret Invasion. If you don't want to spoil it for you, you might want to dip now because Ian Kerner is waiting in the wings. We are going to spoil the heck out of it, and that's what we do around here. So strap yourselves in. It's time for Geekscape. All right, Geekscapists, this is your final warning. This is the Secret Invasion episode of Geekscape. We are going to be going totally deep dive into it, so there are spoilers throughout. We're going to be talking about all 6 episodes, the ending, how it leads into, I'm guessing, the Marvels in November. So if you do not want this series spoiled and you're still like, it's on my watch list on Disney Plus, how bad could people be saying that it is? Let me check it out for myself. You're going to get it spoiled here. So that was your final warning. My guest today, who I started Geekscape with way back when, close friend Ian Kerner, is waiting to talk. And you guys are waiting to hear him because Alan Duke says, yes, Ian is in the house. He just commented from Facebook. We love seeing you at the booth, Ian, and you have some sick Red Skull cosplay. Or I mean, I love your photos, buddy. On Alan Dukes has been posting these photos of him as the Red Skull walking around the con, and I just love it because Matt Kelly and I were mostly in the booth where it's safe, like Geekscape, a safe little place. Next week again on the audio only feed, so subscribe. We got the panel about adapting comics to TV and film, and one of the guests is Stephanie K. Smith, who's probably adapted more than anybody on that panel. A lot of it is novelizations, a lot of it is stuff that maybe never saw it to screen, but she is very prolific as a writer, and she has a long experience adapting material. Her husband is Ian Kerner, who I'm going to bring onto the show, and that was a little bit of a plug for next week and a plug for this man who's coming right now, Ian Kerner, who may be a Skrull. Ian, let's talk. Are you a Skrull?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Okay. But wait. But the Skrulls are aware that they're Skrulls. The Skrull, it's not like, what's the sci-fi series where it's like people are cloned and they don't know?
If you go back to the very first appearance of the Skrulls in Fantastic Four #2,
with the cows,
Reed Richards made them turn to cows and made them forget that they were Skrulls.
Right. And that came back to bite them in the butt.
36.
That came back to bite them and bite everybody in the butt because those Skrulls woke up and they were pretty pissed. Oh yeah, the milk started proliferating in the Marvel universe. It was like Skrull milk.
Yeah.
Geeks gave us Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. They just went with it. All right.
Byrne did that in issue 236.
John Byrne brought back the cow milk from the early Skrulls. Yeah. All right, Ian, let's talk about the comics, because I really enjoyed the Secret Invasion storyline in the comics. It really kind of shook a lot of things. It resulted in things like Norman Osborn becoming president. It really did. It was one of the crossovers that felt like it mattered in the Marvel universe about 10-15 years ago in the comics, coming out of Civil War.
Well, this is the thing that was clever. You know, the Skrulls have been around, as I said, back to Fantastic Four #2. And, you know, obviously they get shape change and all that. And they did stuff way early, things like the Super Skrull, which we're going to get into. But this idea of really making it espionage, really going far with it with Secret Invasion, was a very clever idea. And, you know, at the time, what they did is they really had you wondering leading up into it of who might have been taken. As soon as, you know, like when you first discovered someone was taken, and it was like Elektra. You know, Elektra died, and it was shocking. Elektra died. It turned out it wasn't Elektra; it was a Skrull.
I remember that.
We really found out because she died.
Clearly, like they kill Elektra. Elektra's been killed before, but this time she was like a Skrull dressed as Elektra.
And you're like, wait, what?
What is happening?
And so then this led into this whole idea of who might be a Skrull, and it was awesome.
Ian, real quick, can you move closer to your mic or move your mic a little closer? I think you fudged with your computer a little bit, and it causes things to be a little more digital.
How's it now?
That's better. If you can point it towards your mouth, though, I think is a little nicer. Let's see. I'm sorry, folks, that we're doing this live,
How's
but we
that?
got to do it live. Yeah, go for it. Speak, especially as you just did. I'm sorry, sir, to interrupt.
So as I was saying, you know, it was really great. You know, every issue was, you know, you were on the edge of your seat. You didn't know who was going to be what. There was a giant twist because at first, like, was it someone on the Avengers? And it turned out Spider-Woman had been replaced and was actually the Queen of the Skrulls, Varanki. You know, and that was a major twist. So, you know, leading up to this show, you know, obviously we heard Amelia Clark was in it. We all wondered, will she be Varanki? You know, who's going to replace whom? You know, there was a lot of expectation. I've said for literally years now.
Ian, hold on. I'm still having to, and folks, comment if you're having this problem. Ian's dipping out audio. Ian, can you go into your audio settings and just bail on your external microphone? Maybe. I'm sorry, dude. Sure. I still think that's a scroll detector, and I think that you're failing. Is what's going on. I don't know if thumbs up. Whoever gave us a thumbs up, I don't know if that's thumbs up for Ian sounds bad or Ian sounds good, but or Ian's.
So you want?
Whoa! What'd you just do? What is that? That's bad. That's bad.
The regular mic.
Go with speak. Skrull.
Yeah.
Okay, talk. That sounds good. Let's go with that. Ian.
Great. Okay. How are we now?
No, let's not go with that. Keep going. Don't worry. I'll cut this out of the audio feed. But
okay.
That's great. Whatever you're doing right now,
nothing
do that.
Different.
Okay. Well, then something is shorted. We may have to get you a USB-A cable. I'm sorry, buddy.
Okay. Yeah, no, all good.
Just try not to touch anything, Skrull.
I'm not touching anything.
That is the audio I want. The passion, that is what I want right there.
Anyway. so as I was saying, so, you know, the comic was great. It had this great build up. And the big thing was, you know, they took a bunch of Avengers, all kinds of superpowered people. You couldn't trust anyone. It was this great thing. And what I said years ago is, you know, when they introduced the Skrulls in Captain Marvel, now the initial thing that was kind of odd was, well, they seem so benign, right? And I was like, well, what the hell? Because the Skrulls...
They're not a warlike society, right?
Yeah, the Skrulls were bad. Now, what was interesting about that, and a lot of the time they do this with the MCU, is they do go to the proto version.
Geekscape I'm still having this trouble with the short. There's a short, Ian. Go ahead and dip to another microphone. I'm sorry, buddy. I think it's your USB cable. We will replace it. My apologies, everybody. And my apologies, Ian. We detected it real quick before we recorded, and I didn't think it was going to be an issue.
We could try this.
No?
Is this anything? How's that?
That is something. Perfect. Let's go with that.
I'm just using the MacBook Pro right now.
It's just using the MacBook Pro mic, okay?
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Okay, great.
So
as I was saying, so, you know, going into the idea of Secret Invasion, you know, and going back to the Captain Marvel movie when they introduced them, this whole proto thing, the origin of the Skrulls and the yes. You okay?
It's not. It's. I don't know what it is, Ian. You know what? Forget it. I think it might be it's my headphones. If it's my headphones, it's my headphones. Keep going, sir.
It's your headphones. So you're the problem.
I think I'm the problem. I think
maybe
everybody
you're
thinks I'm crazy.
Skrull. You know,
I think I am a Skrull. Ian, I'm so sorry. I think
plot.
there's a short in my microphone. Is what's happening. Alan Dukes just came in and goes, he sounds fine to me. Geekscape, we have found an accurate Skrull detector. I'm gonna swap headphones. Ian, keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt. Geekscape, I'm so sorry. I'm a Skrull. Keep going, Ian.
This is a nefarious Skrull plot to get us not even to be able to talk about it. That's what's going on here. Jonathan is a Skrull. Now we know. Big surprise. Question is, when was he taken? Has it been all 20 odd years?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Should I go back to the other mic before I get on roll?
No, yeah, go back to the other mic.
Jesus.
What a bunch of amateurs. These headphones are going in the trash.
That.
All right, Ian.
Good.
Yeah, you sound excellent. Alan
so as I was trying to say, so the idea in Captain Marvel that they were actually benign goes back to the Skrulls' origins. The Skrulls were subjugated by the Kree long ago and have been at war with them forever. So we have a version of that going on where, you know, they've been, you know, subjugated by the Kree. That's what we saw in Captain Marvel. But we didn't really see just how good they were from a war standpoint. Now, what we get in Secret Invasion, we do find out a bit. Talos is a general. They have been trying to survive and all that. And now we see within a generation, because Captain Marvel was set in the 90s, that a lot of the Skrulls are really unhappy being passive about things.
And it didn't help that Nick Fury disappeared for 5 years during the blip.
It did not help. And, and apparently he knew even then, even before that, his luck in finding them a planet just to live on that wouldn't be an issue, wasn't so good. So, but my feeling was always, you want to introduce, and listen, they did that little plot at the end of Far From Home, that they were there and doing stuff. And we really got that at the end of the movie, that they're up to stuff. And that was great. To me, I felt that the right way to handle the Skrulls would have been to seed, perhaps in a bunch of tags, to seed that they're doing stuff, that they're, listen, they could have lifted a lot of this plot and just done it in tags over a bunch of movies and a bunch of phases as it built up, and we got a giant crossover thing. Because what we knew immediately when we heard it was going to be on television is we knew it wasn't going to be any big Avengers.
Right.
Now, I will tell you, great, you see Rhodey in it, and we're getting to spoilers now when you find out at the end of I think it was the second episode, that Rhodey was taken. Okay, well, at least there's an Avenger. The fact that not once has he ever even mentioned the freaking War Machine armor.
Yeah. Especially when we have an Armor Wars somewhere in the vague future coming, or at least
maybe we do, maybe we don't.
And maybe we have characters like, I know this is a different Ross than we're going to get Thunder, Harrison Ford's going to play in Thunderbolt Ross, but we have a lot of stuff going on, like Martin Freeman's Ross. The Everett Ross was just seen in Black Panther 2, and suddenly he's in this movie or in this show in a Skrull from the opening tag, and that stuff's suspenseful. I think that the cast is the strongest thing about this series. Like,
absolutely.
Just having this all-star cast is incredible. And as I think I texted you about halfway through the show, everything is feeling like two-person acting scenes. Like it's like I think some of the dialogue and the writing and characterization is actually really good. I think the acting you're not going to get better actors than this.
No,
but
that's my thing. My frustration is this thing had a lot of potential that it really didn't live up to. It's honestly, it's kind of a small story.
Yeah,
this story is like a single issue comic book.
It feels akin to the ones that they just did, like the miniseries they just did as Secret Invasion, and it's fine. I think the ramifications for this could potentially be big. The way they treated it was it felt small. It did not feel global. It did not feel like a galaxy-wide threat.
Well, let me say this in the context of mentioning the other shows, because I thought, Stephanie, whom you mentioned, it's interesting on these specials. I mentioned Stephanie a lot, so it was kind of cool she did this panel with Jonathan, because her credentials being what they are. I have friends go like, yes, we get it, you're married. But the point is that I mention what my wife says a lot, because not only she's a professional writer who has worked in the genre space a bit, at the same time, it's not her giant love like it is for me. So she's particularly critical, especially when she feels like she's just seen the same stuff over and over again. So I'm always very interested in her take, both because she's a woman, and that will often bring a different perspective than my own, as well as that she just doesn't love the source material. She often doesn't know the source material going in, and, every now and then she's like, oh, that was actually surprisingly good. Things like that happen versus, or not so good, So that's always interesting for me, with her, I think I mentioned like The Flash, she actually really enjoyed, and, flawed movie, but there were things that were really good about it. So this is frustrating, because I just feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities. You do have this great cast. I do think they set a bunch of stuff up. I'm not sure what they're going to do with it. But what I want to say in terms of the other shows, like I thought, and Stephanie loved the Falcon and Winter Soldier. From the trailers, she couldn't have been less interested in that. But the fact that it dealt with, race relation stuff and social issues so well was one of the best things about that show. And this... So I haven't said this to you, and us commenting elsewhere, but one thing I actually really did like about the end of this, that it suggested didn't quite go as far as I would have liked, is it actually got kind of political there.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end there, it's like it's very much feels like a lot of what we have in this country, regardless of what your politics are, about it was a very red state perspective that President Ritson took at the end there.
Yes.
Very like,
it was Fox News. Like you see a Fox News,
exactly.
you see a Alex Jones type thing. And then beyond that, I think that what I liked about Talos and his story, especially his frustration, I think that here's the thing, Ian, I'm just going to ask you point blank. Like, did you enjoy the series?
I enjoyed parts of it.
Yeah, I think that people will be shocked to hear that I actually enjoyed the series on a whole.
I was disappointed in episode 1, and then episode 2 and 3 I actually really liked.
And I think that Talos scene with Fury on the train where he explains his frustration, it's like, dude, you disappeared on us and we were dying here. There's a major immigration story there where it's like these are people who are trying to find, these are refugees. And for 5 years, we were on our own. There are going to be people who become militant. And the plot line that one of the younger Skrulls grew up among humans, among people not liking them and hidden, and then finally became frustrated and said, okay, we're going to go militant and we're just going to take the planet ourselves. We're on a planet. Let's just take it, and develops some form of the Super Skrulls. We can talk about the Super Skrulls here in a bit, but I actually liked that. Whether or not it was pulled off, I think that anything with like Talos in it was pretty great, and I really enjoyed seeing him act, and I liked seeing him with Emilia Clarke, who played his daughter Gia.
Ben Mendelsohn, Emilia Clarke. I mean, again, you're just great actors in this thing, And listen, a lot of this storyline stuff, the idea that Nick Fury's used them, it was his secret task force. It's why he became this amazing spy. The conversation between Talos and Fury about that who made who and who's been carrying who and all that was great.
Agreed.
Absolutely great. How is Nick Fury this amazing spy master? He knows everything. He's had all of these secret operatives who can become anyone they want. I mean, these guys literally, they harvested the battle scene of Endgame. Like they can go anywhere and do anything. It's like, of course he knew everything was ahead of everything, And I mean, there's no telling what kinds of things they were involved in. Leading up into the creation of the Avengers and all of those things,
But your frustration is a warranted one, because knowing that all those things were going on, it stopped short. Yeah. It stopped short of going all the way. And other than that last image, one of the last images that we see of those kind of pods where the Skrulls are kind of expanding, like other than that, I think that we don't really grasp how much this was folded into the MCU. And I think that there were opportunities here, creative opportunities, to go back through the MCU history and kind of retcon in a way that Civil War did and say, oh, when that happened in an earlier movie, Bucky was there, or this happened, this happened. And I think that would have been a fun way to show, hey, Skrulls have kind of been here since Iron Man, because they were definitely here since Captain Marvel. Right. Because they were definitely here since Captain Marvel. So I think that would have been a fun opportunity. And there was a bit of fun that was missing on this stuff.
Well, listen, one of the things, there's definitely some continuity issues in the MCU. I don't mean the Mattel Cinematic Universe. I mean the Marvel one.
Sure.
In the first Iron Man, it's like no one had heard of S.H.I.E.L.D. What S.H.I.E.L.D., But then as it goes on, it's like they've sort of retconned that, it's been around a long time. Yeah. But listen, that could have been they were around as a secret organization, but seemingly not so much. Like people actually know what S.H.I.E.L.D. is. It's really,
not if you have helicarriers floating in the sky. No.
Yeah,
those are pretty telling.
It's tricky.
It's easy to notice when flight paths are being diverted for a giant like aircraft carrier floating above Manhattan. It's pretty easy to move. Yeah. That being said, like this, I think some of it was also muddy, and I think some of it is because you're trying to do a mysterious show and you're trying to keep the plot at a simmer. Some of the characters I didn't ever really connect with, and sadly one of them is Amelia Coleman's character, who is such an incredible actress on every level.
I want to talk about that character, and let me just come back to something I want to say about how the show overall. So hold on Sonya Fallsworth.
Got it.
Let me say this. Here's my frustration. You and I, we've done so many of these, and back in the day in particular, we saw how connected it was, and we get so excited. And I've sort of learned my lesson. And my lesson is that it's never going to be quite as connected as we want to be, because we're used to comic books.
Sure.
We're used to comic books where there's that key issue thing and you need to know this story and they're just going to tell you what you missed. And what we've been seeing a lot, particularly in the last couple of phases, is they kind of tell you what you missed, or they just kind of like, you either get it or you don't, and they just go on and they write it so that the new project just stands on its own and you just have a better understanding. Well, more than this not standing on its own, the big question is what comes next, and that's the thing for me, because, you're building a base in theory, but no, I'm pretty sure we're going to go into Marvels and fine, his wife might be there, so we might get some exposition there.
A base in as story-wise in Foundation, or a base like Sword? Because when we're talking about, okay,
I mean that there's a base in Foundation. They may springboard on some of this stuff. For instance, it may very well be, to me, if they were really going to use this, and they're going to springboard into Thunderbolts, for instance, and Captain America: New World Order.
It's a great opportunity.
Why these things are happening? That they're upping their, listen, the Avengers are disbanded. Okay. Post Endgame, there's no Avengers currently. We saw that in Falcon and Winter Soldier, right? So within that void, and in the comics, it happened for a different reason. But within that void, there's no Avengers. So the government's gonna have a fully government sanctioned team come together, right?
Yes.
That's gonna be the Thunderbolts. As opposed to the Avengers, whom we saw in Civil War, were not willing to just do whatever the government said. And I think what we can expect ultimately is that will lead Sam Wilson to reform the Avengers, saying we need the real Avengers. We can't have that. We can't have these guys doing stuff because, so to me, what we see of Ritson at the end of this should be
President Ritson.
Yes. Should at least politically be the star of this. Now, rumor has it that Thunderbolt Ross will actually be president in Captain America. I don't know if that rumor is accurate or not.
But not in Thunderbolts.
Well, presumably if he's in the one, maybe the other. But again, I don't know if that's accurate.
Which one comes first, Ian?
Captain America's before Thunderbolts.
Okay. So the rumor is we might get Thunderbolt Ross as... any relation to Everett Ross?
No.
I didn't think so. But
my expectation is that he's going to become Red Hulk in Captain America. The leader's the bad guy. He's
a scientist. I got you.
You have Thunderbolt Ross in this movie. You have Liv Tyler, so Betty Ross in this movie. You have the leader. They've managed not to tell us the Hulk's in the movie. It would be ridiculous if the Hulk is not in the movie. That's first of all.
What about our most recent Hulk star, She-Hulk? Could she be in the Thunderbolts movie?
She could be in the movie, but again, the most ridiculous thing in the world would be if you don't have Ruffalo in the movie. Okay? He should be in the movie. They just may not have told us yet. Because
it sounds like there's a whole lot of gamma going on in the Thunderbolts movie.
It's a Hulk movie, and I've heard that the rumor I hear is that they keep rewriting this thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's a whole lot less Sam Wilson, a whole lot more Hulk.
But that leads to the next Avengers movie,
right?
It's
going to lead to Thunderbolts first.
That leads to Avengers 4, which is not Kang Dynasty, correct?
No, I think it's Kang Dynasty,
but is Avengers 4 Kang Dynasty?
Yeah, 4 is Kang Dynasty and 5 is Secret War.
Okay, guys, this is getting away from me. So somewhere in there, Sam Wilson reforms the Avengers in that.
Before then, I would expect maybe in that movie, but hard to say.
Well, let's get back to Secret Invasion, because Everett Ross being we just saw him in Wakanda Forever, and now we see in the opening he's a Skrull.
And we don't know exactly when that happened.
We don't know when Rhodey was taken. How did you feel about Maria Hill right as the cliffhanger?
I'm very upset by that. I felt like, look, much like Secret Invasion, some of these big storylines, someone big has to die, so she's someone big. But other than that, it felt like, I agree. I love that character. I think they could have done more with that character. I've wanted them to do more with that character. So I think it's a loss that,
Yeah.
But again, this should have been.
Yeah.
Hey.
I think it was appropriate. I think it's appropriate. With all this Shield stuff and Fury stuff going on, and knowing that Coulson was an LMD, at least he got fixed and all this. And Shield, where can we bring Coulson back? No offense. I like the Shield show. You like the Shield show. Where are these characters? These characters are established in the MCU.
It's another problem because they did crossovers with the Shield shows. And here's the thing, and not a lot of people realize this. In Age of Ultron, the helicopter carrier that shows up in Age of Ultron, you actually see the setup for that happen on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mm-hmm.
So you had actually really good tight continuity stuff going on then, but they had seen Infinity War when they did that crossover. They weren't given Endgame because at that point the two sides of Marvel weren't really talking very well. So the last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is completely outside the continuity. The first 6 are totally in it.
But now, what would it take, Ian? Ian, can you make some phone calls after the strike? Don't cross any picket lines for us. But after the strike, can you make some phone calls and maybe get some of that ABC stuff back into continuity? Because
sure, I'll make some calls.
We had a Mockingbird in there. Speaking of some of the people,
I love that Mockingbird.
But seeing that some of them they became, in the original comic books, Mockingbird was one of the major Skrulls.
Right. Yes, but by the way, even the perfect example of how them avoiding the continuity, instead of ever having anything go on between Hawkeye and meeting Mockingbird, Bobby Morse, instead they had the wife that we met end up being a former agent, so which essentially is like so great. So he was married to Mockingbird, he's married to a different agent, so which we got in that Hawkeye series, which I loved. In its way, I loved it in one sense, but also hated that, it eliminated Mockingbird, So, listen, it's never perfect. What they've done consistently, they take titles and they do their own thing with them. Overall, this show, I just think of what could have been. I think that, who knows what the hell they're going to do with Kang at this point. They have to recast him. I think, they can't say it because they're worried that's going to affect the ratings on Loki, but there's no way it's going to stay.
Jonathan Majors.
Yeah. So, so that's a mess. And I think people are burnt out on the multiverse thing. I mean, honestly, cinematically, it just feels very much like the same movie over and over again.
Regardless of what Spider-Verse did?
Spider-Verse is its own thing and it's different.
I agree with you.
But... And listen, and Deadpool's going to do it, and Deadpool's going to make fun of it.
Yeah. And then can you release a Kang Dynasty? Can you release a multiverse movie? Or even, after Deadpool skewers the multiverse whole thing? I don't know if you can.
I mean, you can. But, I'm just not sure.
Are people just taking it seriously?
I don't know if anyone cares. That's part of the problem, I mean, look. Listen, on the Doctor Strange special, we talked about this, Multiverse of Madness. They could have set up some interesting stuff to push stuff forward. But again, as I said, they don't want to make one thing dependent on another. To me, having him jumping through the multiverse and actually seeing Hydra Cap, even as a cameo, would have been great. And, and having Hydra Cap show up in a Captain America movie, like that's a movie people want to see. Mm-hmm. That would be cool. The idea of the evil version of Steve Rogers. That would be awesome. I can't imagine you doing a multiverse and you don't do something like that, even though Hydra Cap didn't actually come from the multiverse, but still, to me, that's the way you do that. But I don't know. We're going to see that or not,
Well, Ian, let's talk about some of these characters. Like we talked about Olivia Colman's character. Where did she come from? Had she been referenced in any of the earlier MCU?
No. So in the comics, you had James Montgomery Falsworth, who was a soldier. So we actually had that character in Captain America and Captain America: The First Avenger. It's a British soldier, that was.
He's one of the Howling Commandos. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the comics, they made that character. He became Union Jack, who was basically the British version of Captain America. Didn't have any powers. Then continuity-wise, they had a thing like his brother was Baron Blood, was a vampire, was a big part of it. And his daughter was injured and got a transfusion from the android Human Torch, and she became Spitfire. And then eventually in the comics, she became a vampire. So she's currently a vampire with super speed powers, but whatever. So ostensibly we think, but we don't have any confirmation yet. Odds are Sonya Falsworth, whom Olivia Colman played, is related to James Montgomery Falsworth.
British spy.
Yeah, exactly.
It works for me.
Why have that name if that little Easter egg isn't?
It's fun, but will we see that character again?
I would expect so, but again, I don't know. Same thing with Gaia. I mean, I would think that it might be. And actually, I read an interview with the director of Secret Invasion, who said he doesn't know, but it might be that it was just a nice resolution that's what she's doing now, and they just leave it.
I don't know.
It might be that they go back to it somewhere.
we've introduced in this series the most powerful character in the MCU, and we got to talk about we have to talk about the whole Super Skrull of it all, because in the original comics, the Super Skrull was what? Ian, I'm leading you to give me the obvious.
The original Super Skrull clerk because remember the Skrulls were introduced in the Fantastic Four. They were their big antagonists. So the Skrulls found a way to copy the powers of all the Fantastic Four and gave it to one Commando Skrull. So basically, and visually it was cool because he's a Skrull, so he could literally, you'd see him stretch like Reed Richards, but one of his fists would be like the Things, and the other fist would be on fire like the Human Torch, and part of him would be invisible, and he's doing invisible, shield and stuff. And the thing was, it was always kind of cool. The Fantastic Four would beat him because working as a team, they actually beat the one guy that had all their powers.
Yeah, and he was great in the Capcom versus Marvel game. I think you play a Super Skrull.
And in Annihilation, ultimately, they ended up, redeeming him because, obviously they're all fighting together. So he actually became something of a good guy there, which makes sense.
But this is not that Super Skrull, Ian. What is this? Because I paused on the screen to see with the link. You paused on the screen where it said Groot.
Yeah. So initially, the initial powers they had before they got the Harvest, they had Groot, they had Extremis, and they had
one of the ice giants.
Yeah. So
it just said Jotunheim, and it was one of the ice giants. But those were the three characters. You had basically Mr. Fantastic's ability to grow in Groot. You had some form of a elemental attack with the Jotunheim stuff, and then the other one was
Extremis is the healing.
Extremis is the healing. So it was close, but from the get go, I'm like, it's Super Skrull, but it's not Super Skrull,
right?
But let's give it the MCU Super Skrull.
Right. So then we get to, they actually get the Harvest. Now, one of my big issues with this episode, first of all, it was
the finale.
So obvious.
Yeah, the finale.
Yeah. So it was so obvious that was going to be Gaia.
Yeah, it was not going to be Nick Fury stepping in there.
He's practically dying from radiation. All right, it's not And I just felt seriously, she's there. Doesn't know. I guess he has Extremis. That's the reason not to just try to kill him already. I kind of feel like it's really risky to give him the Harvest and let him get the power so she gets him too. What if he just got away?
Yeah, what if he just took it and got away? What if he knocked her out of the device? What if he did a million things? Why did you give him the Harvest?
Risky to me.
I thought the Harvest was going to be a poison. I thought the Harvest was going to be defunct in some way. But he tests it and he does it, and we have an ending where there's two people with all the combined MCU characters' powers together doing a fight fest. I got to tell you, I thought there were parts of it that were cool. There were parts of it.
I thought that parts of that were really cool.
Where I was like, that's Super Skrull on screen.
Yeah, I mean, what was funny to me at one point though, they have all the mixed DNA, so you see visually who they're channeling with DNA, and at one point you see Drax's arm, and I'm literally so the Hulk's in there, so you're channeling Drax's DNA for super strength when you actually have the Hulk. Seemed a little silly to me, other than the visual cue, but whatever. But ultimately it did seem like they were hulked out, right?
Yeah, but I also think that they all just kind of settled on Captain Marvel. They're all glowing like Captain Marvel at the end, and I'm like, you guys picked. It took you a while to cycle to the most powerful one. Thoughts on that ending? Because ultimately, you now have Gaia, the surviving Super Skrull, walking around, and that's a pretty big character to have walking around as you move forward in the MCU. And does it get addressed? Does it not get addressed? Does she disappear like Captain Marvel because of her OP nature and being too powerful to be she's basically like a plot armor suddenly that she shows up and everything's kind of flattened.
It's an interesting point. I think considering what the storyline for Marvel's clearly is, which is strongly set up at the end of this, that they're actually in negotiations, Skrull and Kree peace accords, right? So my assumption is at least that much is in the Marvels, right?
Okay, so you might have Gaia in the Marvels.
Maybe.
I've told you I thought I saw some actor playing a version of Hulkling in the Marvels. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, but yeah, I thought that this was if the Marvels goes bad,
that makes sense. The idea that because the Hulkling is a character who's half Skrull, half Kree.
That's right,
royal. So
yeah, and he can unite them. But is that ending of the Marvels, and ultimately as well, do we get some form of the Kree Skrull War, or has it been going on in the background this entire time? It just hasn't
I think it's been going on in the background, so there's no reason.
And we do, and none of the Avengers have been a part of it. So I'm sorry on that missed opportunity for you, Ian, that you wanted to see the Avengers. Yeah. Maybe we have that sequence, Geekscapists, where for the 20 years or so that she disappeared. Yeah.
Jonathan, one of the biggest problems with the MCU is we never got Rick Jones.
We never got Rick Jones. And before we got a Super Skrull, we didn't get Reed Richards and the rest of the Fantastic Four. So things get a little wonky here and there.
Yeah.
You know? I like the idea that we have a Kree Skrull war going on the entire time. I would love some version of a story where that is where it was pulling Carol Danvers away from the MCU that we knew for so long. That
as far as
it's been going on the entire time.
I mean, she's gone for what it's supposed to be almost 27, 28 years, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm. That would explain a lot of it.
I expect that's going to be a conversation between her and Photon,
right? And ultimately, like Ian, Nick Fury gets on the transporter or whatever to go back up to Sword, the little sky base he's been spending time with ever since he got back from the blip.
Right.
We've seen it in the Marvels trailer. Like, is there anything else to the Marvels other than those three main characters and Nick Fury and the Kree Skrull stuff? Does there need to be? And like, what from this carries on beyond maybe Gaia? And the main thing I'm asking is, there's a president at the end of this.
I think that the politics that are happening on Earth have to be at least referenced in the Marvels, right?
Yeah. So the president is pretty anti-Skrull at this point.
Yeah.
President Dermot Mulroney is pretty anti-Skrull. And what are those pods that we saw at the end of this season?
Presumably more people that are taken, that have been replaced by Skrulls.
So there's no resolution in this series to the problem presented in this series.
One of the things I liked, because it was kind of unclear, is again in the finale, Gravik says, "Oh, whose face is it?" Because they don't just make up a face; it's someone he killed. The idea of the pods is just that if they want to access the memories, they need those pods. So who have they replaced whose memories they're accessing versus just straight killing them? Same thing with Nick Fury's wife. I thought it was really interesting. She found someone that would be someone that he could love, and she copied her, and she took some memories and then made her own, And even the idea that she still visits that, that person's family and all that. Interesting,
Yeah.
I guess she decided to forget all about that at the end, but whatever.
She's like, yeah, I'll go with you.
She said she's only going to go for a little while and come back. So by the way,
she may not be in the movie. Right.
Yeah, maybe like she went and then she left to get a happy ending, but I'm back already.
Well, the two characters that we know for the MCU that were definitely taken, and we've
in fact, she's probably not in the movie for that reason.
No, I would say she's not in the movie. But Everett Ross, are we going to see him in the movie? He was taken by the Skrulls. We definitely just saw him in Black Panther 2. Rhodey, are we going to see?
Probably not.
Was the Armor Wars movie or series taken? Because are we ever going to see that?
Well, I know that they decided not to make a series. They were going to supposedly make a movie, and that's unclear now. It's not been officially announced on the schedule. So we don't know if we're getting there or not. And I honestly, do we need it? What would Armor Wars without Tony Stark be, but just this? And what I mean by this, like, it's okay, here's going to be a story of Rhodey going off to go after armored characters whom in the comics we were familiar with these characters, and Tony showing up, sometimes heroes like Stingray, and messing people up. Whereas, whereas what would that be on this with things we haven't seen before, and he's just going around doing stuff? Who cares?
It could be Rhodey and Ironheart chasing down armored.
Right,
but Mickey Rourke could be the bad. Mickey Rourke could be the big bad working with Justin Hammer again.
Sure, but I'm just saying that, but great.
And that's what it sounds like it is. It sounds like Justin Hammer as a villain for sure.
I'm sure that's what it is, but is that 6 episodes? Is that a 2-hour movie? What is that? I haven't heard a hook that I'm dying to see yet.
No.
That's all I'm saying. But maybe they have something interesting.
I think a hook would be fun. Would be having a Justin Hammer or somebody bankrolling something like the new Thunderbolts, or having his involvement in
that
something
would be
like that,
interesting.
where it's like, hey,
but listen,
we're making a brand new Avengers team. Justin Hammer's meddling as well, and you have a bunch of these different kind of background villains getting together to make sure the Thunderbolts are a influenced version of the Avengers.
Sure, but listen, again, I keep saying this thing about the lack of continuity. Shang-Chi came out a while ago. We recently heard that the second Shang-Chi probably wasn't even going to happen till beyond Secret War, right? So like we're years and years away from it. The end of Shang-Chi actually set up something interesting with, the sister taking out, right?
Yeah, she took on the 10 rings. She took over the 10 rings.
And then nothing.
You don't know that. I mean,
what I'm saying
the
is
Kree Skrull War has been going on this entire time. We haven't seen that.
Exactly.
You seem okay with that?
No. This is my point. My point is that it would have been interesting to see at least a reference or something like the continuity. Listen, it's a big world. I get that, but wait several years in between projects. I think for me, it would be better if you actually saw something. Look,
is the universe too expansive? Is it becoming too cumbersome? Is it too expansive?
I mean, maybe yes, maybe no. It's a question of time. The thing about the comics has always been a lot of the time you have comics keep coming out. Now, every now and then you have something, and particularly back in the old days, you'd have a writer like a Steve Englehart or Chris Claremont, who they'd work on a book, and then at a certain point, maybe they'd leave the book or the book would get canceled. And they'd set some stuff up, and they'd move some of these little interesting plot lines of things they were doing over to a different book.
Right, Sabretooth being one of them. Like Sabretooth
was in Iron Fist and moved over into Power Man Iron Fist. And, since Chris Claremont and John Byrne were both doing that while doing X-Men, so they had a little crossover with X-Men. They did the connection between Sabretooth and Wolverine, I mean, that's an example, but you've always had stuff like that. You have ancillary characters that get moved around because they create them and they like them, but, or you have bigger plots, you have smaller plots, I mean, and that's how a lot of the stuff in Marvel and DC both developed over the years, things like Thanos, started in Iron Man and then, ended up in Captain Marvel and Warlock, and, Avengers, Marvel 2-in-1, like moved around, those plot lines, Silver Surfer, of course, so, I don't know. I just in the one sense, as I was really excited about a lot of these shows. So I said, okay, it's really cool to do some of these storylines. You never see this stuff elsewhere. A question from day one is I don't know if everyone's going to be interested in this. And that's what we've seen. I thought Ms. Marvel was overall really solid. I thought the 6th episode was whatever.
Sure.
It was a really solid show. Am I excited about the Marvels coming off Ms. Marvel? Well, I mean, people go to see the Marvels and they haven't watched Ms. Marvel. Do you appreciate that movie as much? You know what I mean? It's tricky. It's weird, right? I mean, you could certainly see the Marvels without seeing the Ms. Marvel show.
Yeah. So again, the question is this too expansive? Are there too many characters? Is it too cumbersome to fight? I mean, in a comic,
not to me, but to a lot of people it is. To me, it's almost not expansive enough because I'm like, all right, great, you did something, and now I'm waiting 7 years or something before
to see these characters again.
Up. That I find that frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, we can always dream about where we want to see these characters again. Like I just said, like having Justin Hammer show up in the Thunderbolts and meddle a bit with the plans for this team would be I like the ideas of spicing up with cameos and having characters reintegrated that we haven't seen for years.
We've been waiting 12, 13 years for the leader since the Incredible Hulk.
He was a Universal release.
What was more than that? It was 2009, 2008.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
2008.
And we only really saw him in the beginning of his transformation. I'm super stoked.
Right.
But we're going to get him. It's going to be good. I think I'm excited about it. Ultimately, I think the budgets are what make these kind of impossibilities. When you have these massive productions, a lot of different actors you have to pay, schedules you have to satisfy. In a comic book page, it's really easy to have cameos and have crossovers and have people appear in this and that. But it's a little different in Hollywood, as we know.
Sure.
Alan Duke says, ultimately, there's no clarity as to where all this is headed. And just, if you read it on the screen, you're going to be confused because he wrote wear as in underwear instead of, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
But where it's all headed, I think ultimately...
Well, that's okay, because we should know everything that's going to happen,
But the big Avengers movies are no longer the, what these things are circling anymore. These aren't leading to the big events anymore.
Well, it is ultimately, but again, I think this would have been a much better thing to lead to than Kang's multiverse. Now, do I think Secret War can ultimately be kind of cool? Yeah, but it's just going to feel like another retread of the multiverse, all concentrated, right?
It's going to feel like a party. Yeah, it's going to feel like a party. If it's the Hickman stuff, I'm going to be super happy, and it'll give Marvel a chance to reset going forward. And I love that. I love that cool plot
line. I don't know that we're getting that,
right.
But
it is what it is. I think some of this stuff was stuff that we enjoyed here in Secret Invasion. I think ultimately, I enjoyed it more than the majority of people did, based on online reactions and reactions with friends. I think I actually enjoyed this more than most people did.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I definitely enjoyed parts of it. 2 and 3 I thought were really good. Off of 5, I was kind of like, all right, whatever. Like, I mean, I was able to wait the day to watch the last one, the 6th one. The 6th one, my feelings were mixed. I think it's clear. There were things I really liked. I mean, I rolled my eyes, as I said, so they both had to become Ultimate Super Skrulls.
Yeah.
Seemed a little silly to me, and then she killed him, and I'm not even clear. I mean, I don't know what the rule was. How did she kill him with the extremis and all the other abilities he had? But still, it's what she stabbed him in the heart.
She punched through his body. It was pretty violent. Yeah,
I mean,
that was too much Skrull.
Captain Marvel.
Yeah, but so is she. That's just too much Skrull for one person. That's just too.
I guess when she punched, she also. Captain Marvel nuked him from the inside. I don't know.
She nuked him. She cooked him. It was too much. Too much Super Skrull for one Super Skrull.
He should have been fully disintegrated.
Just atomized.
Yeah.
She should have turned into the Beyonder at the end of this.
Yeah.
And like just atom. She should have turned into the Neil Diamond looking Beyonder. By the way,
can I say one of my big issues with her, with Gaia, is we never saw who she's based on. There were all kinds of rumors that she was going to be Abigail Brand and things like that. Like, that would have been interesting. So that's a major, plot hole, not reconciled. Maybe she's nobody, it doesn't matter, but it would have been interesting to me if she had been somebody, right?
We're going to miss Talos, but at least we got Gaia bringing his story forward as his daughter. And maybe one day we will get the Neil Diamond Beyonder on screen. Or at least long shot. We should just do a special where you talk about how you would do the Mojoverse as a movie.
Okay.
I actually think the Mojoverse, listen to this. I think the Mojoverse, and I'm just spinning off now because I know X-Men 97 got delayed and we got to talk. Mojoverse should actually be a Disney Plus show parodying reality TV. It should be it should be a Disney Plus version of Survivor. Because that's what the
Mojoverse is. Once you get into the X-Baby stuff, I always found the X-Baby silly. Funny sometimes, but silly.
But Art Adams, dude.
Long shot. I think the Long Shot miniseries was great.
Right, but Art Adams, dude, like Art Adams. Yeah, you got to buy anything. Anything Art Adams bought. Like, remember Art Adams with the X-Men Fantastic Four crossover in Asgard? Like, dude. Man does not get as much credit as Art Adams is one of the cornerstones.
Absolutely.
And people forget about him when it comes to designing the X-Men and creating a lot of the X-Men universe. But Art Adams, some of that stuff was amazing. All right, we're getting away with it. We're getting away from it. Anything you want to add for Secret Invasion? Anything? Last thoughts?
No, I mean, it's interesting. I spoke to a friend of ours, to Justin, and he's not even going to bother. I'm like, I think it's probably worth watching.
Bother. Justin should bother.
And I know, that's what I said. And I think that, there's going to be stuff I expect things to hold over. As I've said a few times today, my concern is they're a little too worried sometimes about referencing the other thing and making people feel like, okay, I'm watching this now and I don't get it because I didn't see this other thing. And I understand it.
But they should just rip with it.
It frustrates me.
They should just reference it.
Because it's less complicated that way,
And if you have a previously on Marvel Universe, like if you have these references, and again, it goes back to the idea I had that if you had a fun sequence where you saw Skrulls integrated in the MCU prior to this, and you could have had like that could have been a fun sequence. And I think that it gets to what I think is ultimately my only big problem with the series is a tone and pace. When a lot of the scenes were two people talking to each other, and that really hurt the tone. It really hurt the rhythm of the show. But then there's a lack of levity, and I know that it's spycraft and it's that kind of stuff, and it's there's seriousness and it's life and death and global implications. But the Marvel Universe has always had some bit of fun. And I think a sequence where you saw the Skrulls integrated in a lot of the things we're familiar with already would have been a great way to say previously on the Marvel Universe, but also, and like revisit that stuff. And they've revisited it before. They revisited it in Infinity or in Endgame when they went back in time. I think revisiting a lot of these fun moments, but putting Skrulls in them would have been a great way to catch us up with it, refamiliarize us with everything, and also show us they've been here all along. And then you can get serious, and then you can be like, oh my God.
I agree. That would have been a really interesting thing. Showing them involved in different things that we've seen before
would have been more fun than the AI intro credits.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, intro credits.
That was not a good not a good look. But
no. I agree.
Not during a strike. Especially not during a strike where AI is one of the major discussion points. All right. Here's Travis Mitchell, one of my friends from way back when, saying, I think it should have actually been Fury fighting Gravik, temporarily getting the powers of all the people he brought together, but ultimately I think that would have burned him out. He's still only a human.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it seems like the idea is that the ability to get the powers is based on the Skrull's mutagenic, qualities already. So if you get into the idea that you can give it to humans, now you're in a whole different, ball game, right?
Yeah. Ian, love you, man. Don't know what else I have to add. But yeah, we got it. We're gonna look forward to Loki in the MCU. Loki's next, I believe. And then in November we're gonna talk Marvels. Before that,
Craven got pushed.
Craven got pushed, and so I'm sorry about that, Geekscapists. We weren't able to. Craven got pushed. We can't bring a Craven special.
Did they push Madam Web too?
I don't know. I don't think was Madam Web ever. It was on a spring schedule. Was Madam Web on like a spring schedule?
Isn't Madam Web coming up soon?
It wasn't going to come out in 2023. I thought if anything, it was a spring schedule. Geekscapists, I know what's coming soon on this feed. If you're an audio listener, you're going to get the panel featuring Ian's wife, Stephanie K. Smith, and Chris Black, who you know from Severance, and which I think is an incredible show. He was on Severance. He was on another comic book adaptation that was Outcast, a Robert Kirkman book. And then, speaking of Madam Web, their two writers, Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless, are on the panel. They've also written Morbius. So we have those four writers on the panel with me. You're going to get that in the feed here. Coming up if you're an audio subscriber. So you should subscribe and you should pass this on to your friends, regardless of Jonathan's headphones. Actually, if you're an audio listener, clean that part up and you're not confused at all. All right. Travis Mitchell says, whoa. You could have had a moment where Gravik says Fury should be dead. Fury says, you don't do what I do for as long as I have without alien blood in your DNA.
Nah.
Okay, all right. Travis, I like your swings. I like your swings at what should happen. I like your MCU. Travis, I like your MCU. We celebrate you here on Geekscape, and we'll celebrate you going forward. Geekscape forever. Thank you, Ian. Subscribe, all that stuff. All right, peace.